Sherry Whitaker Budziak is an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and a visionary strategist who helps organizations 10x their productivity. And I'm probably being conservative, Sherry, by aligning processes and people and technology and purpose. She's the founder and CEO of .org Source, where she's helped more than 350 organizations transform the way they work. And what's so unique about it is she's integrates human potential with the power of AI to drive growth and innovation. And as Gary said, AI is just like kind of front and center in our in terms of every group that we've been involved in. ASAE annual, we're holding events. It's a big topic. So Sherry brings multiple AI certifications to the table, a deep passion for helping leaders embrace technology with heart. She's also the co-author of Rug, Move What You're Tripping Over and Lead with Heart, where she teaches her powerful heart leadership method, and it's H.E.A.R.T, which stands for humanize, empower, ascend, reimagine, and transform. So it's really with great honor and my pleasure in joining, welcoming Sherry to the group today. Sherry,
great. Thanks so much, Greg, and congratulations, Gary, again. And as Greg mentioned, we're having this discussion today around AI policies, guidelines for responsible innovation. But there will also be a couple other webinars in the series that we're going to have two, one in December on prompting and one in November with a case study from an organization that's used AI. That's usually a discussion. People want to know, how are people using it? So we're going to do more of that case study next month. So we're excited about that. But as Gary said, I'm Sherry, and today we're just going to explore not just the hype, but what's involved with creating policies, guidelines, and safeguards around AI. And I know that when people hear AI, the reactions fall typically into two camps. So we have some of you are really excited about what AI can do. And there's others that I know that are like, oh my gosh, the fear, concern, and you guys know people in both camps in your organization, and both are valid. But my job today in this session is to help balance these kind of emotions with frameworks and kind of practical steps. So as a little bit more about me, I've been working with organizations for many years, helping with kind of digital transformation. I'd love for you to connect with me if we haven't already on LinkedIn. Here is my QR code for LinkedIn page. Also put it in the chat. I write about various topics, leadership and technology on a daily basis. So I'd love for you to follow me there. And as I started out my career, I actually started working at Panasonic selling batteries to that big, huge wireless phone from Motorola. So, that's back when some of you probably don't even remember that brick of a cell phone. And I knew nothing about selling batteries or technology, but somehow I got entered into this world of tech. But I had always dreamed of working with a nonprofit. So I found myself moving into the association world. And that's when I traded that brick phone for a weighing word processor. Now I'm really dating myself, right? And endless file cabinets. And instead of running away, which I thought about, I kind of embraced where they were at their organization. And the CEO at the organization at the time came up to me and said, Sherry, you're the only one that knows how to use a PC. Can you help us develop our first website? And, I was like, okay, I didn't know what a website was, but we launched the first website for the AANS and CNS. And you can see it literally had a spinning brain. And that was pretty cool at the time, pretty advanced, only that it took about 10 minutes to load on the AOL dial-up. So when I left the neurosurgeons, I went to the Academy of Dermatology. I started up there for a profit subsidiary that did website development for other associations. And the theme here, it looks like purple was like the color at that time in the mid 90s. And then after 9 years at the derms, I started .org Source. And .org Source has been around for 20 years. We provide services from strategy, technology strategy. We're doing a lot of work in AI readiness and organizational strategy. So for the past couple decades, I have been working with organizations on a lot of, like I said, digital and tech strategy. So I would call myself a tech enthusiast. I have way more technical people on my team, but I've really kind of been told that my superpower is translating kind of all this fast moving technology that can be intimidating into something that's human, approachable, and actionable. So today I spend probably 15 hours a week learning and studying all the latest and greatest things that are going on in the world of AI, so I can distill it down and bring that information to groups like this. So as we dive in, I wanted to take a moment to absorb what this chart is. So I talked about, the cell phone. It took 12 years to gain 50 million users with the cell phone. The internet, 7 years. But when ChatGPT came out, it took 50 days for 50 million users to get on ChatGPT. So I know that, everybody kind of asked me, look, how did this happen? How this happened so quickly? Part of this is evolution and our ease in adopting new technologies. But this is pretty impactful. And I think this is why some of us are challenged with trying to keep up with this quickly evolving technology. So, but we all know AI isn't the future, it's here. And we want to talk about kind of 3 areas where AI is transforming associations. First, around member engagement through personalization. Some of you may already have chatbots for member services. We're seeing a lot of operational efficiencies, automating workflows, data analysis, predictive analytics. And some organizations are really looking at strategies to innovate and provide new products, new member benefits. So there's really some really exciting times. So before I continue, I kind of wanted to hear, where is your organization on the AI journey? So are you exploring? Are you experimenting? Or are you already using AI tools? So if you could kind of put in the chat where your organization is today. That's great, Danielle. Already using AI tools and have an AI governance policy. That's great. Staff is using it here or there, no guidelines. We're hearing a lot of that, they know that staff is using it, but there's no guidelines or guardrails or training. So we've kind of got a mix. We've got a mix of exploring, staff using with no guidelines. Some of you are more advanced. So that's great. So I think, as we go along and when we get into the breakout sessions, for those of you who already have policies and things like that, we'll look forward to you all sharing that information with the group. So my next question is, how is your organization approaching AI right now? Are you with excitement or caution or uncertainty? So again, if you post in the chat, yes, LOL, all of the above. Yes, Lauren, we can say all three, right? So there's like tons of opportunity, but some people are not sure, cautiously. Everyone's saying all three, right? Because building into strategies depends on who you ask at our org. That's very common. The tech team with uncertainty, but most staff are excited about using it. So yeah, that's pretty typical as well. So kind of let's look at kind of what are the 5 steps in thinking about a policy. And I'm kind of going to take you through kind of some of our processes of doing an assessment, finding out what those objectives are, creating the policy, the guidelines, and training. So let's get started with what an AI readiness audit is kind of about. So when we're looking at kind of assessing your current technology, you really want to look at your current technology usage and your data infrastructure. So one of the things that we're encountering with organizations is some of the whether it's the CEO or the board is really excited about AI. But one of the things to ask yourself is, do our systems integrated? Is our data clean? Is it centralized? Is it accessible? Is it scattered around in spreadsheets? Because as you know, most of you on this meeting, is that AI is only going to be as good as the data that it's working with. So this is really a critical foundation and a critical discussion. Then the next is to really understand what your staff level is and what your comfort level is with these tools. So some people are already experimenting with ChatGPT at home, let's just say, while others may be totally intimidated by AI. And depending on your organization, you're going to have people across all those spectrums. So knowing where your team stands kind of helps you design training programs and support systems to meet them where they are. So, the point is that, each of these steps just kind of provides a little more clarity as you kind of start your journey with AI and these large language models. So the next is really to assess your current state to help you define, and create clear objectives. So too often we see organizations jump into AI because it's the shiny new thing, right? It feels exciting, but we don't have a strategy and things start to fizzle out, or people just say it's not working. And this is kind of really sometimes hard for organizations to wrap their heads around, is identifying where AI can make an immediate impact, right? So this step, we say kind of get these AI champions in the room and start talking about what are those common things that are holding you back, that take a lot of time, that can kind of free you up to be more creative, have more engagement and personalization, personal discussions with your members, or whatever the case might be. And then, really kind of start small and define what success is going to look like. So that's a really, really important step. And sometimes when we ask folks, what are your goals, they can't answer this question because, as you all know, just saying we're going to use AI, that's very large and hard for people to get their heads around. So how many of you already, saw some of you already have a policy in place, but if you can just kind of put in the chat, yes or no, if you have an AI policy or guidelines in place. No, yes. I think we've got to kind of have half and half here of yeses and nos. just implemented recently. All right, great. So I would say we're at about 50%. Well, I want to talk about the next step is to establish that AI policy. So if you don't have one yet, it is important that you have a framework to guide your efforts when AI, comes into play. So I want you to think of your AI policy as your organization's kind of playbook. It ensures that it is used ethically, transparently, and responsibly. And this is important not just for compliance and data security, but also for building trust with staff, with your partners, with your members. And a policy should clarify the purpose and scope of AI, what kind of activities AI will support. It should outline ethical considerations. So some of those things around like biases and how you safeguard around biases, around kind of fairness and transparency. And it also needs to define your data privacy and security requirements. So some of folks, we're seeing their staff is using AI tools, but IT hasn't been involved with making sure that they're set up where they've got security, where they're not training the models, things like that. So that's, one of the reasons that, or some of the reasons that it's, important to have a policy and some guide rails. So here we want to talk about kind of acceptable use. For every organization really needs to define where AI fits in and where it doesn't, right? Where there might be risks and where we may not want to be using AI tools. Again, really thinking about data handling, what information can and cannot be entered into AI tools. And, when ChatGPT, et cetera, came out, people were like, oh, everybody knows we shouldn't put our membership data there. Well, sometimes this has to be very, clearly defined. And then what are those appropriate tools? And what is our organization going to leverage? Having those settings and controls, so we have those safeguards. And Kevin recently worked with an organization, and they were using a tool that he said, do you know that like they own all of your data, right? You didn't read the contract. So those are things that you want to make sure that you're putting safeguards around. And then if there is an approval process, so who approves or reviews the AI tools that you may be using? So these are some of the reasons why we really need to think about having a policy and making sure that we're building in that transparency and making sure that we're protecting our members' data, that we're reducing bias. And this also creates some staff confidence that they do have some guidelines when using some of these tools. So next, I kind of put together in an AI policy some do's and don'ts that you can see here. Our EA group reviews and approves technology request. Yeah, that's great. I mean, just like with any other technology, there should be some approval processes. So here's some things just in an AI policy for do's and don'ts. Encourage experimentation, but don't share confidential information. I mean, a lot of this is probably logical for you all, but I do think it's really important and important to train staff on responsible use and to align AI with organizational values. So the next is I put together kind of a sample AI policy, and we're going to share one with you here shortly. But making sure you have a purpose statement, that there's disclosures on how AI can be used. As I mentioned, data protection and bias mitigation is really important. So step 4 in developing your AI guidelines and best practices is once you have a policy in place, now how do we put it into action, right? So policies will set a direction, but the guidelines really shape the behavior and they tell your teams how to use it responsibly. So it's really important to really look at, what are those day-to-day scenarios that can help guide the staff. And most importantly, and we all talked about it, is that human oversight and that decision-making criteria, that we're not just going to have the AI create something with no oversight, right? So what are those processes that we're going to put in place at our organization? It's no different than any other, editorial process or things that have gone on in the organization in the past, right? So, but it's really important to kind of spell out what those guide rails are and what are some best practices. So my next question that I have for you all is, how prepared do you feel your staff is to effectively use AI today? So very, somewhat, or not at all. We're seeing a lot of somewhat, all over the place, not at all. Looks like Edward and Danielle you guys are ahead of the pack here. So that's great, very. So we've got a lot of somewhat or not at all. So the 5th step is really, it's important to build confidence in these tools. And it's really important for the staff to be educated. I think this is one of the things that we're seeing, that it's really exciting to be able to use these tools. And sometimes it feels like magic and people don't need training, but it's really important to build competence. Train the staff on the basics of AI and machine learning and what an LLM is and how they work is really important. It's important for staff to understand how to prompt effectively. I think some of this, down the road, it's going to be all about, how do we ask the right questions? But like I said, we do have a whole session on prompting that we'll do in December. But it's really important to train staff. And then don't forget the ethics and compliance. And this is where that scenario-based training comes in, and help walk staff through examples to help build the competence and confidence in AI tools. So the goal really isn't to make everybody an AI expert. The goal is to create a culture where staff see AI as a partner and not a threat, right? And then once you've done this, it's really important that we measure, monitor, and improve. Right now, we're advising that, every 6 months, we should probably be looking at our AI policies. We should probably be looking at, are we creating more work, or are we actually improving upon outcomes and our productivity? So it's really important to measure and monitor as well. And then, as I kind of started out, the overcoming some common challenges of people being fearful or resistant. I think we have to know that while some of us, probably most of us on this webinar, are excited about the opportunities, you are going to run into some resistance. So I think it's really important to communicate clearly about the why. Why are we using these tools? How is it going to help? How, there's going to be concerns from folks. So I think it's important that we just consider that as we're bringing on AI, or frankly, any new technology. We all know that comes with a little bit of fear, and people don't like change. And this is rapidly changing how we're working today. So in terms of kind of acceptable use and prohibited use, I kind of gave some examples. Some of you may agree or disagree, but we may want to spell it out for our staff to say it's okay to use AI for blogs, for newsletters, for brainstorming, for copywriting, but it's not going to be approved for making hiring decisions, or we can't upload confidential financial or HR information. So again, I think it's really important to really outline those things for your teams. And then even with the best policies, there may be incidents that happen. So, when AI goes wrong, who is responsible for handling that? And what is what is going to be our response? So for instance, maybe, there is a data breach, or there's information that's being used and there's some bias output. Some member communication goes out wrong because it was generated from AI. So I think it's something that we need to start thinking about is, what is our response plan going to be? And recognize it, have a team or a person or whoever responsible for helping mitigate those issues, assessing the impact, making sure that we're communicating transparently. And then what did we learn from that? And how do we make sure that we avoid those issues in the future? So for those of you who don't have an AI policy, we have an AI policy. You can use the QR code. And this, I would say, though, would be a starting point. So you can use this template, get a team of people together, kind of talk through the pros and cons, and make whatever changes that you might need to make to your to suit your organization. But we have it here if you guys want to scan that QR code and have a starting point. So some of the key takeaways is AI adoption. We all know it's no longer optional. So it's critical for us to stay, relevant and understand its impact. We need to have some clear guidelines. We need to engage our staff and members to build that trust. And finally, really commit to continuous learning and improvements, because things are changing rapidly. One day I'm training on an AI tool and I say, well, this doesn't work this way. And then the next week it works a different way. So really staying on top of training and making sure that your policies stay evergreen. So if you want to talk more about AI, we do have a LinkedIn group on people that are interested in AI. Sometimes I share things that I see on LinkedIn that might be interesting to people in the association space. So you can scan the QR code there and join that group if you'd like.